What is up? You have found We Like the Blazers. I am Brandon Goldner, and this episode we are going to be talking with Cory Dickman of the Rip City Roundtable. Shout out to Cory, who also is proprietor of Rogue Media Network, which is the network that carries our podcast, as well as Rip City Roundtable and Trail Daddy with Dave Deckard. Had a good conversation with Cory about the Blazers' 3-game winning streak and just things that we're feeling optimistic about with this team. For the first time in a while, it's actually fun to watch the Blazers again, which is great. Other piece of news is that Ryan is not going to be on the pod for a bit because he's too busy at work. Ryan has said that the job that actually pays him money is more important than this job that doesn't pay him anything. But completely understandable. Ryan, we love you, and we will see you when you are back. But in the meantime, please enjoy this conversation with Cory. And I do invite you, if you're listening to this, to please go search whatever podcatcher you use, whether it's iTunes or CastBox or Podbean, and look for the Rip City Roundtable with Cory Dickman. He comes weekly with guests. Most recently had Adrian Bernisic and Corey Bergen of Blazers Edge. He's had, can't remember anybody else off the top of my head, I guess me, and other people who are more knowledgeable than me to talk about the Blazers. But yeah, do search for the Rip City Roundtable. You will find the episode you're about to hear is also on their feed, because that's originally what we recorded it for, but decided to also receive it, release it on the We Like the Blazers feed. So with that, enough talking. Please enjoy this conversation with me and Cory about how the Blazers are actually doing well and they're actually fun to watch. Appreciate you all, and chat soon.
All right, Rip City Nation, country, continent, Brandon? I don't know. All the places.
Peninsula?
Oh, Peninsula. It's another good one. We are back for another episode of the Rip City Roundtable podcast. As always, your host, Cory Dickman. And today we are joined at the roundest of tables by very, like, Brandon, do people talk about, like, how good looking you are? You could be a model.
Oh, shut up.
Brandon, you could be a model. If you're listening to this, Google Brandon Goldner. You just Blazers. Just do that. He is
Cory, people are going to be very disappointed.
No, they're not. Co-host of We Like the Blazers podcast. Brandon, we've known each other here for a few months, a year maybe. I don't really start of last season.
Last year, when I came back to Blazers Edge. Yeah,
when you came back, and you've really, like, stepped up your role with Blazers Edge, right? You're doing more this season than you did last year.
Yeah, I have, in fact, become an editor once again. They just couldn't get rid of me. I'm like a virus, like a worm, just wormed my way into the intestines of Blazers Edge internal. Yeah, so I am a junior editor. I'm an editor at Blazers Edge, which is great. People, if you know me, I have a long history there. Spent a couple of years there as an editor, and I took some time off, and now I'm back. And yeah, so I'm helping with writing now. I'm doing more writing. It's been a lot of fun doing game previews pretty regularly, and then just kind of random bits and bobs as news comes up. But yeah, it's been great.
Nice. Yeah, it was fun having Connor. Him and Adrian were on the first, or kind of our first episode as we got back into the season, and Connor has taken a big step up in his role at Blazers Edge, and it's kind of been fun to see some of the people I was working with last season, like, doing more this season. And I know you had more of a track record in the past, but
just shout out to Connor Bergen. I mean, it's amazing because Blazers Edge is now credentialed for the first time in a decade since Ben Golliver left to go to the Washington Post. That salty dog. Boo. No, we love Ben. Ben's awesome. Yeah. But yeah, no, I love the work that Connor does, and he's actually there doing the work. So yeah, shout out to him. And then Adrian, as always, when are we going to get Adrian's angles in the headline? I'm tired of you just talking about it. I feel like we should make it happen.
We should. I don't really have, like, they let me, when I say they, the powers to be at Blazers Edge, they let me publish the, like, the stories about the podcast that drops. They let me do that. Yep. They would never let me publish an actual, like, piece, but I want to go
and
edit. No, I want to go and edit Adrian's after the fact and just see if anybody notices. Because why are we making that a thing? Like
we should totally make it a thing. Yeah,
we're gonna make it a thing.
We're petitioning.
We have to. Well, I'll say this, and then I promise it'll transition into what we're going to talk about here. But so I do these post game analysis for the Blazers, extended recaps as they were or are, but I hadn't done one all year. Just life and the time zones. I'm in Texas, and it's just we have a 2-year-old, and so I can really only do the late starts. Like any home game, I'm probably good, and then West Coast teams, I'm probably good. When we go on East Coast teams or Midwest, I'm out. I can't do them.
Yeah.
But okay, so we get the first one that I'm like, I can do this was the first game against the Timberwolves in the opening round of the NBA Cup. And I was excited because I'm like, look, I hadn't done a game yet this year. I've been watching games, but I hadn't written anything on them. Right. And then it's our NBA Cup, and I'm like, okay, if we're gonna get up for a game, let's just win the cup and then lose all the rest of the games. Right? Was my mindset, Brandon. So we go in and we just destroy them. We win by 20 or whatever, close to.
Yeah.
And now, Brandon, we're on a 3-game winning streak, and it's because of me, because I did the post game analysis. Right? It has to be.
I do remember Chauncey Billups saying, I was reading something from Cory Dickman and it really inspired our guys. So it was you. Unbelievable.
It had to be because I write very nice things about Chauncey. So,
and then I think I heard Jody Allen and Burt Cold were saying something about it too. Like the Paul Allen estate they're talking.
They are. I send Jody a letter probably once a week saying, dude, just give me the team, Jody. Just hand them over to me. Brandon.
Well, just really quick. I mean, how the win against the Timberwolves you said you did the first one, the first of the two against the
NBA Cup one.
Yeah. So, but that followed like a 50-point loss to the Grizzlies. I mean, what?
No.
Like what percentage did you? Right. And so now they're on this 3-game streak. I mean, how different do you feel now after these 3 games than you did after that 50-point loss? And Chauncey Billups is calling out the players. And the next day, Robert Williams is talking about an elephant in the room. And Toumani Camara is talking about families got to be honest with each other. Then they rip off these 3-game wins. I mean, I don't know. It's just crazy.
It was crazy. I think remember that point of last season where we went on that road trip and we lost to OKC by 60 and we're getting slaughtered, right? The average margin of loss was 49 or whatever it was. And the Memphis game happens to a Memphis team that shouldn't even be beating anybody by that many points. And it was okay, this is what kind of year we're going to have. And we expected this. It sucks. And I think when Klingon was getting the start in that Minnesota game, Ayton's out, Klingon's in. I was like, okay, we're changing something up a little bit. There we go. And then we're 5 minutes into that game, and Simons has the chest issue or respiratory. Yeah. I don't know, Brandon, if more's come out now about it, but
not yet. But
not yet. That seemed, I don't say mysterious. I rewound it on NBA League Pass. I went back and tried to find was he elbowed weird or something? I didn't see nothing. And
it's my sense that there's something that we don't know that's going on with him is my sense, but I don't know.
You're 100% right. I'm not a doctor, Brandon. So, but it felt weird to me that both Ayton and Simons both are out. Basically 5 minutes in, Simons out, and all of a sudden it was the floodgates open, and we had this young team that more concentrated minutes with 8 guys, and that's what the product we got was this awesome win.
Yeah.
So
right. I mean, and I mean, you didn't ask a question in there, but I'm going to pretend like you did, because what I've heard from some readers on Blazers Edge and something I've wondered myself is when you have a team that the veterans know that they're probably going to be traded, or they're at least not long for this team, in kind of the team's long range plans, how that might affect you as a player, how that might affect the way that you think about yourself and how you play. And it is strange. Is the team better when they don't have Anthony Simons playing, when they don't have DeAndre Ayton playing. I'll just say I'm not there yet. Like, yes, they have played better these last 3 games when the young guys have gotten more chance to get out there and show what they can do. I'm not all the way towards like, oh yeah, like they're actually better on the court without people like Anthony Simons, DeAndre Ayton. But it is kind of a coincidence. I mean, at a minimum, right? Like it does make you think.
It does. Yeah. It does, dude. I may take the point that they are better. I think Simons is a talent, and last season he's
had a rough year this year too.
Oh, rough year,
like really bad.
He just doesn't. And I've said this on past episodes with the Rip City on this podcast. Of just like, even the first game of the season, like he's just, the body language looks off. He looks like he knows something that we don't know. Meaning like, hey dude, we're trading you at some point, but go out and be a pro. Like someone said that to him, because he's not knocking down open threes, Brandon. Like his percentage is sub 30, I think at this point, and or right around 30%, which is not Simons. And that just tells me something's off. He knows something, dude. He knows something. And him locked in, yes, he's a talent and he would make us better. But this version of Simons, no.
Yeah, and the Blazers as an organization are in a tough space. And I wrote in the preview for the Hawks game that the Blazers front office is doing this dance with the coaching staff right now, because clearly the players are feeling a certain way about where the team is, where the franchise is, and where the veterans might or might not fit into that. And I asked a series of questions, and I want us all to think about it. We don't have to answer it, but if you're listening to this, how do you balance the organization's need to lose games to get a high draft pick with the development minutes that you need for the young guys, with the need to put enough structure around those young guys that they can develop, because they can't just go out and play completely unorganized. They need something around them, with the need for human beings, which these players are, to feel fulfilled and that they're getting something from this experience. Like, Cory, balancing all of that stuff is hard. And this is the part about sports that doesn't show up in the trade machine, that doesn't show up in the 2K trades. It's the human element of this sport, of a bunch of really hyper-competitive people. But after all, they are human. And I just think that that's what we're seeing from this team right now.
Yeah, I think 100% right. And the other thing that you didn't mention that's part of that too is just like, you don't want to build that culture of losing, which can start to affect a player if you just lose every season. Shaedon Sharpe has never really been on a winning team ever at the professional level, and you start to just keep losing. It's like what Philly did, Brandon. Like this whole, we're just going to keep getting into the lottery every year. Well, how many championships did they win? 0 from all that process, the process. And now Embiid is like, he just isn't, I don't think he wants to compete. I think he just takes the nights off. I'll wait for the playoffs. And so I think that's drilled in him, because his whole career as an NBA player has been like, or the beginning of it was, let's lose to get the better pick, which on paper makes sense. That's what you should do to make your team better, or one of the things you can do. But you don't want it to build the culture of losing. You want to watch the balance.
And I'm not a psychologist, just as you are not a doctor. Yeah. I do think that teams kind of bank on the fact that NBA players are so incredibly competitive, because to become an NBA player, it takes a lot, right? It takes like some genetic luck, then it takes a ton of hard work, and it does take just a deranged amount of competitiveness. And they sort of bank on, well, we can be terrible for a few years and the players will eventually bounce back because it's in their nature. But I like what you're saying, that you can't take that for granted forever. But hey, you know what, Cory? Let me do this pivot. Let's talk about something more fun. You're talking about Shaedon Sharpe. You're talking about winning. Yeah. Do we want to talk about these last 3 games, or like, where do you want to start? Do you want to focus on the one against Atlanta? The Blazers just ripped off this win after being down 20 in the first quarter, or 16. I don't know, something like that. But
yeah, who's counting, dude? Like, it got me. So I'm watching the game, and we were down. What was it? 78, 60 or 76, something of that degree. And I'm watching it. And if this had been 2 weeks ago, I would have been like, yep, we're going to cruise to a nice loss here. But because that's what I would have thought. But because of those 2 Minnesota games, And what I've seen when Shaedon is the centerpiece of that offense, I'm like, we're going to come back. Like, I just felt it. And all of a sudden you start threes and we're playing harder on defense, blocking, rebounding. And with just Brandon, then all of a sudden the game flipped and it was like, shoot. And then I know then Atlanta made their little comeback and then we closed it out. That was so exciting. Like, I it's fun to cheer again for players and moments on this team. I thoroughly love that Atlanta game.
It was a lot of fun. And that third quarter, like you're talking about, it really was like, I think I've been a Blazers fan for a long time. And I've gotten used to rooting for competitive Blazers teams led by Damian Lillard. And since he left, and even frankly a little bit before that, I've also gotten used to the team not being very good. And something was awakened in me last night, Corey. And it was what you're talking about, that it's like, the Matrix, he's starting to believe that, like, that like your biases are tilting towards, I think the Blazers might be able to do it. And it really started with, I mean, we're talking about Shaedon Sharpe, and we should talk about him more, but Toumani Camara's defense. And to me, that's where did you get the sense that the rest of the Blazers were like watching him on defense and they were like getting pumped up, like, okay, we have to do that too? Like, because that's kind of what I was seeing.
Yeah, 100%. And I think it's in the heads of the other teammates, not the teammates, the teams were playing, and they're like, oh my God, here's this guy again. Like, they know Toumani.
Picking me up, like, like half court or even beyond. Like,
and when guys like Steph Curry bring that up, they're like, well, yeah, Toumani, well, he picks me up full court. Like, they're saying his name. They acknowledge him. That is huge. And even like he's getting run on other big podcasts. Like, people are talking about Toumani and they're talking about his defense. That guy's motor and the offensive jump that he's made too, Brandon's incredible. But yeah, teams, like, you can see guys be like, oh no, here comes Toumani. And like, all game, like, eventually that'll tire him out as in a long season. But even if he can start to just pick moments where he's like, okay, 6 minutes left in the fourth quarter, I'm no more 6 quarters. I'm going to pick up full court and just give it all I have for the last 6 minutes.
Yeah.
That's going to be amazing.
It is. And like, to have someone on your team who, to your point, I'm just going to repeat what you said, but say it differently. He could just at any time make it really miserable for the other team. And then you add to that Robert Williams III. By the way, it's amazing to see him healthy. How many lobs did he get last night? He got out for like 3, 4, 5 lobs. Like, he's looking fresh. He was getting his hands in passing lanes. Like, he was doing everything that you would expect of someone who's a defensive player of the year level of player. Yeah. And then remember who is not currently playing, but Matisse Thybulle, who is going to come back at some point. Like, is this a good defensive team, or could this be a good defensive team for the first time in, like, I don't even know when?
It's the calling card. Like, when Tease comes back, like, this team, that is what they'll be known for the rest of the season. And if we end up not, playing well, and we end up, getting in the lottery or whatever could happen. The fact that we're even saying could at this point is interesting, Brandon. But regardless of what happens, it's going to be defense, because even like Scoot, like, offense is still coming, right? But the effort is there on defense. Now, he picks up fouls a lot, sometimes blah, blah, blah. But like, his defense is there. Toumani, even Shaedon's not a scrub on defense. You get Tease back, Klingon, Williams, Grant. I mean, it's like, oh my goodness, man, we're throwing everybody out there that's playing defense.
Yeah, and I like what you said, too, to like bring it back to Shaedon Sharpe, who, we got word a couple hours ago that he was under consideration for Western Conference Player of the Week, and good on him for that. First time in his career that he's had consecutive 30-point games, and he completely took that game over last night, scored the Blazers' last 11 points. Like, everything that you want to see from his development, Shaedon Sharpe is doing. But to your point, also, Shaedon Sharpe, until now, has been at times a little mercurial. His effort has kind of come and gone. He hasn't always looked locked in and engaged. And that was something, because I did the extended recap last night. So it was the first game of the season. I did an extended recap. Oh. So I'm sitting on my computer taking notes. Yes. I was noticing, to your point, on defense and offense, even before he really got going later in the game, that Shaedon Sharpe was engaged the whole time, the entire time. And he was trying the entire time. And for someone who's that athletically gifted, that's what really needs to come next. And that seems like that's what he's getting to right now, which is really, really cool to see.
Really cool to see. Yeah, that sequence at the end of the game where he does the step back three that looked like he's taller. He's taller than Dame, so it didn't look the same. But that's the move, right? That's the step back three that he watched Lillard in practice and in games. It was the same move, and just drilled that three.
He got a lot of separation on that, too. There was a different camera angle that showed it even better than like the regular game feed, but like he got so much space in one step. Yeah. Really impressive.
Incredible. Nails the shot. And then, Trae Young kind of threw a weird pass, but at the end of the game, but Shaedon stole it, and credit to him. Like, he jumped the lane and he got the steal. And it's like, how many times does a guy hit a game winning three and then get a steal on the other end to close it out?
Totally.
He did miss a free throw there, I think, right at the end, or one of them.
He missed a couple, but he made enough of them. And by the way, one of those missed free throws then turned into a 4-point possession because it was, I think, the step back that. Anyway,
it was.
So
a step back. Yeah,
he did it on purpose, Corey. That's what I'm saying. He missed it so he could get the three. That's what he did.
He knew. He called it. He's like, I'm missing this. He gave the signal. Right. But man, it's exciting. I one of my good buds, I'm texting him, and we were just going back and forth of like, can Shaedon be the guy? Like, is Brandon? Is he a top 10 dude? Like, could he be a top 10 guy in the NBA? I'm going to ask you that question before I say what my response was. But do you think he can be a top 10 guy? Are you seeing it right now?
It's such a tough question because, like, top 10 in the NBA, I mean, how many players have the Blazers had like that for an extended period of time? Damian Lillard for a time. Yep. And then before that, like, was LaMarcus Aldridge like maybe top 10, maybe at his like peak, but not for that long. Brandon Roy for like the quickest flash, but it just doesn't happen very much for Portland is the thing, to have someone who's that caliber of player. Man, I just think it's too soon to tell. I will say this though, if you think he can be a top 10 player in the league, the run of games that he's had and how he's doing it, and then specifically the effort level and like being willing to put the team on his back to be the every down type of player who knows, hey, I'm going to take the last shot. I'm the one who's going to get fouled. That's exactly what you want to see from him in year 3. So I think it's too soon to tell for me, but it's not, the question isn't deranged. Let's put it that way.
Okay. It's not deranged. I said yes. I've seen Brandon. I've seen it. I've seen enough. No, I've seen enough.
Mr. Optimist over there.
He looks the part. He plays hard on defense. I've thrown around again. Because this guy was a Laker, I wasn't a big fan. But like, could he be Kobe? Does this look like Kobe out there? Like, gets the separation, has a beautiful shot. His shot is beautiful, and he is not a slouch on defense. In fact, I think if he puts more effort there, which he just never has had the games in a row, Brandon, because the I word that I'm not going to say out loud, he's always just gotten bitten by that bug that starts with the letter I, and so he has to stay healthy, and I want to see this all the way through, and to answer kind of a question you had presented a little bit ago was like, with management, what's the line, right? They have to teeter both development, losses, but let's still get some wins. Let's be positive. Right. And like, can Scoot, Shaedon, and Toumani, because if we're being honest, those are the 3 we have to see if they can gel all together, at least from like a front court perspective, or a 1, 2, and a 3. Like, we have to get them as many games possible. And if we're just winning, then do we know now? Like, and if we are winning, I think it's because of Shaedon making the jump and can be that guy. I think he could be that guy.
I think he can too. So I don't want to sound like I'm being extra negative. It's just again, like, being that guy takes a whole lot of stuff beyond the skill and the athleticism, and it really is about the mentality and the consistency, which we do see coming. Here's what I'll say, my hot take. I was thinking yesterday, and, I put out a very brief discussion question on the site today, basically saying, what do y'all think about Scoot Henderson right now? And my thought is, you mentioned Shaedon, Scoot, and Toumani. What if it were Shaedon, Toumani, and Clingan? And listen, the Blazers front office, watching Donovan Clingan, it's still very, very early, but having a near triple-double with blocks in the last game, had a quieter game against Atlanta, but still, is proving that he can stay on the court. Looks a little bit winded. I think that will come in time, but has the defensive awareness, has the mobility, clearly has the mentality to be like a defensive player of the year candidate at some point.
Yep.
Does Donovan Clingan showing what he has showed already so far, does it make the Scoot Henderson development question a little less pressing? Because I do think that is going to be, the Blazers are going to have to ask themselves, are we sticking with Scoot Henderson or not? I don't think you have to decide that right this moment, but do you think that Donovan Clingan showing what he showed makes that a little less kind of pressure filled for the front office?
Good question. This is my thought to that, and let me got to figure out how to phrase it so I phrase this correctly. I think Clingan has showed so much, and I may not be the president of the Clingan fan club, but I'm the treasurer. Like I love everything Clingan's doing.
Is that even an elected position, sir?
It's not, but it's fine.
Disappointed, yeah. Okay.
Clingan, 8 block, like you almost right. That near triple double is incredible. But I think Clingan, much like how the Timberwolves and Utah with Rudy, is like a force to be reckoned with in like regular season games. But then when you get to a playoff or when
don't do it.
I'm going to do it. I just think unless I see Clingan's going to have to show another level of, like, can he be a playmaker on offense, or can he just can't be a liability like Gobert is, because the man is 7'2". He's huge, Brandon, and that's great. But I think that can get abused in certain matchups. So regardless of how incredible he is, I worry that the ceiling in matchups, that's why it works so well against Minnesota, because they're rolling out a massive guy too. And you know what, Brandon? Ours was better. Like the rookie out of UConn outplayed this like 3-time, 4-time, however many times Rudy Gobert's won Defensive Player of the Year. He outplayed him. And I think if you were to poll 100 people, would you rather have Rudy Gobert or Clingan, forget like salaries and all that stuff? I think people would still take Clingan. I think they would. But I'm not worried in those matchups. Atlanta, that's a weird one, right? Okongwu, he's not, they have so many wings that Clingan was always going to struggle, or he wasn't going to have the type of game that he had against Atlanta.
Which is funny because, he's still, 6 points, 8 boards, 3 blocks in 22 minutes. It's not amazing. It's not a triple-double. It's still pretty good. The thing I find interesting, ironic, frustrating, I want a time machine for this, is if you take the archetype of a player like Donovan Clingan, giant defensive-minded center who can stay on the court. You take the archetype of a player like Toumani Camara, big, rangy wing, can stroke it from 3, and can be your point of attack defender. And those two players would mesh and would have meshed so well with one Damian Ollie Lillard. And it's so frustrating that he never had a chance, right? Like, at least not later in his prime, to play with players like that. Neil Olshey just refused. But anyway, this isn't about talking shit about Neil Olshey, but I don't know.
Brandon, and you're right. And there was a time I did this piece on a podcast last season, and it was in the playoffs. And it was like, how many Blazers are in the playoffs right now? Like across both teams on the East and West. And Brandon, it was some obscene, like 13 Blazers. I gave myself like a 3-year window kind of thing. So I'm not like Nick Batum, but but within a 3-year window, there was like so many Blazers. And if you were like, wow, if I could throw Josh Hart on that team with that guy and put him around Dame, that would have been great. And it's like, we could have had that. Like, we actually could have easily put that together. And we didn't. That was frustrating. So anyway, to your point.
But the last thing I'll say about Donovan Clingan and like the comparison to Rudy Gobert, I think maybe where I'm coming from this at is if the Blazers, if to your point, if Shaedon Sharpe is like, can be the guy, so there's your number one option. Then I guess, yeah, all right, fine. I'm actually coming around to your argument because it would stand to reason. Like Toumani Camara actually does have a little bit of off the dribble juice, at least is able to like get to the rim more comfortably, especially this year than last year. And he can shoot it from deep, so that's helpful. But yeah, maybe Donovan Clingan does need to add something on offense. That's fair. All of this is just to say like where the Blazers are now and how much fun I'm having watch them like the last couple of games. We're going to ignore the fact that they lost by 50 to the Grizzlies, but it has been, this is what, as a fan, this is what I want to see. I want to see the young players showing something. I want to see the team be competitive. They don't even necessarily need to win. Just give me something to root for. And it does look like this 2024-25 version of the Blazers is going to give us something to root for. That's pretty cool.
It is really cool. And I think, you know, where you were going with that point of like Clingan and Scoot, and this was the other half of what I was going to say, is like Scoot or Clingan may be more impactful for the Blazers. Like we might have really hit on that draft pick where with Scoot, there was so much hype and expectation and it may just not be there with him. But I think his ceiling in that role as a point guard and just today's NBA, Scoot can have an impact in any game, regular season or postseason, in any matchup more so than Clingan can. And that's where I don't know if I brought that point home, Brandon, but that's what I meant by it. Like I love Clingan probably more as a prospect right now than I do Scoot, but I think Scoot can be in that starting lineup and be an impact player for the Blazers regardless of matchup in the postseason.
Interesting. I mean, I hear your point. It will be interesting to see as Clingan continues to get more game time, right? Like what he's played, like a dozen NBA games in his career. Some of these teams he's played twice, or even three times in the case of the Timberwolves. But we'll see. Like I feel like when I watch Donovan Clingan play, his mobility, I think, might be a little bit underrated. And I think that he may be able to hang in more lineups than some people are giving him credit for right now. So let me just put it that way. The other thing about Scoot Henderson, just to kind of knock a positive, doesn't make any sense, to say something positive, which I truly believe is true. Yep. Ignore the box score. If you watch how Scoot Henderson is playing, he's so much more patient. He is so much more deliberate. He's so much better at waiting and then using his athleticism either to get an advantage against the person who's guarding him or to find somebody else, rather than last year when it was just like he's just mashing the turbo button. It's like, what is he doing and where is he going? So even in the game against the Hawks, like, again, the box score doesn't jump out, but when you watch him play, I see meaningful development from Scoot Henderson, and that's just really good to see.
Yeah, I'm with you too, man. I do. When the natural ability is there, I think his leadership skills and things that are going off the court and behind the scenes, I think is there too. And he just needs to slow down and let the game come to him. And I just think another season away from that draft, that pivotal Dame or the third pick in the 2023 NBA draft, we needed to get away from that, because that was a lot of expectation on a guy that really came into this needing a lot of development, and we needed more time away, and maybe put the spotlight on Shaedon, get some spotlight on Clingan, and then we as a fan base, I think, will be like, oh, we still have Scoot and he's still doing things well. Yeah. We will be surprised in a good way, I think, where we end up with Scoot by the end of the season. I like it. From your beautiful lips to God's ears, Cory. Mwah. Okay, one last point, and this is more of a negative thing. Not negative. I have one last thing, Brandon. So you emphasize, like, you know, we're winning, 3-game winning streak, right? We after the blowout to Memphis, like, what changed, right? What changed? And I go through the minutes here of the Atlanta game. Okay, you had Toumani leading the charge with 35 minutes, which is incredible. That guy can probably play 48 and never give up, but 35. Then next is Shaedon at 32, Scoot at 30. And then this is a lovely breakdown, and this is why we're winning. Grant, 28 minutes. Advia, 25. Rob, 25. Banton, 26. Klingon, 22. They're all in that mid to late or 22 to 28 range, which is great, consistent minutes. Then throw in, Chris Murray, who played well in 8 minutes, and Ryan Rupert, who played well in 10 minutes. Those are our two guys, right, that are going to come off the bench and do their thing. This is a nice little rotation, 8-man rotation here, Brandon, that shouldn't we just trade Simons and Ayton now? Let's clear the pathway. Let's trade them.
Yes. Here's the problem, though, that Anthony Simons playing the worst basketball that he has played since he became a starter doesn't exactly scream, I want to trade him or trade for him, rather. Other teams are not going to want to trade for him if he's playing this poorly. DeAndre Ayton, I think his contract, even though it's going to be expiring, I don't think anyone wants to take that on either. That's the problem. So then you are left with people like Jeremy Grant, who I think I'm like unnecessarily frustrated when Jeremy Grant plays, and I think he's perfectly fine, and I think I'm just biased against him at this point for the same reason I just want the development minutes to go somewhere else. And then you have Robert Williams. Robert Williams, I wish he could just stay on this team forever. Be a mentor. This is the guy that you want to learn from, and no offense to DeAndre Ayton, not DeAndre Ayton,
no.
But Robert Williams is the guy you want to learn from. But that's the thing. It's like the better these players play, the more you want them to stay on your team, the more attractive they are to other teams in a trade. And the worse they play, the more you want them off your team and the less that teams want to trade for them. That's the problem.
Yeah. No, you're 100% right. That's the problem. I just think that Cronin, if he gets his sales, wear your sales hat, Cronin, and just say, look, this Simons version that you're seeing, this isn't Simons. He's distracted.
Trust me, bro. He's so much better than this.
Trust me, bro. He's distracted. He knows he's on the way out, Brandon.
I know.
He doesn't. I don't see a way he stays. I don't know, and I don't know. I don't know how he stays.
Let me ask you this. If you were Joey Crones, if you were Joe Cronin, would you be willing to budge off of your asking price and take a little less for Anthony Simons just to get him out the door? Or are you going to hold on to him until he starts playing better? Like, what are you doing?
Okay. I'm going to say something, and this is not, I don't want to be insensitive because I don't know what injury he has. It could be a scary, it could be, let's pretend for a second that it's not a scary injury. Okay, Brandon? I would keep Simons out 2 more weeks. Just fake the injury. Just say, yep, it's still something weird. We're figuring it out. Ayton, was it an index finger injury?
It's a finger thing, yeah.
A finger thing. Give him 2 more weeks with his finger
Give
thing.
him a Rubik's Cube, maybe he'll sprain his finger again.
And let's see what this team does for 2 more weeks. And I know that's not a massive sample size, but give me the same minutes that I just laid out to you. Give us those splits. Obviously, Rob's not going to play back-to-backs, right? So, maybe you get Jabari in there to fill in. But, give me 2 more weeks. And, Brandon, if we're, killing it just like we are right now, then lower your asking price and just trade them. Trade them.
It's also weird, too, and I know that we're getting short on time. It's also weird because part of the reason for making these veteran trades for future talent was to make your team worse, but the team's playing better without some of the veterans. So I don't know what to do with that. It's just, I don't know. Fun. It's fun for me as a fan.
It is fun, dude. This has been, oh my gosh, so obviously better than all of last year. And then even that last stretch when we had Dame at the end where
you kind of knew it was getting near the end.
Yeah, that was no fun either. So it's been no fun for 2 years almost. This has been fun. Yeah, this has been fun. But anyway, we'll keep it rolling, bud. I appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, I appreciate you too. Thanks. Obviously, you can find my stuff at Blazers Edge. You can also find Cory at Blazers Edge. And you can find my stuff at We Like the Blazers. So, sorry, you didn't even ask me, but I'm doing the thing.
You're doing the thing.
Yeah. Doing the thing.
You got to do it. It's assumed.
You have to.
Assumed.
Oh, wait. Also, find me on BlueSky. It's great over there. Go to BlueSky, everybody.
BlueSky. It's all blue and all sky. So, all right. Brandon Goldner, thanks for being on the Rip City Roundtable.
Appreciate you.